I'm Rob Kaufman. My pronouns are he, him. I am the SVP of engineering at scientist.com. And I'm here today to talk about migrating Hyraxes off of Fedora 4. Um, my goal here is just to give you a status update on what that process looks like right now. This is very similar to the presentation I gave at Connect in the fall, but with some updates on some things that have moved forward since then. It is finally time. I know as a community, we've been sort of stalled out over the last, let's say, 4 years trying to get to here. And there have been a lot of features that have been on hold and a lot of kind of hand-wringing concern trying to get to this place. But we are really in a spot where we can do a big catch-up across the community. And it is my personal goal to see as many Fedora 4 instances shut down as possible over the next 6 to 12 months. I know that many of you will ask the question of like, can we put it off? Can we do it later? And theoretically you can, but the domain knowledge for doing it is sort of hot off the presses right now, and delaying upgrades only makes them more expensive in the future. So though you can put it off, I think that doing it sooner rather than later is going to bear a lot of fruit, and doing it when a lot of other folks are also migrating has some serious advantages. There are a couple paths for migrations. You can stand up a new system, export everything from the old system, and re-import it. A lot of us did that in order to get to a Hyrax system. And I know that politically, it's very hard to export everything from Hyrax and re-import it back into Hyrax. You're more likely to re-import it somewhere else at that point. So I think that that has some real problems. Also, there's going to be some sort of pause point or stop in the ingestion of data while you do that. And I think that that's really problematic. The other would be to do a data migration in the background and do some sort of hard switchover. Again, that is kind of fraught with pauses in metadata ingestion or times when the system might be down or sluggish or not performing well. And then lastly, I think there's the option to do it live. And I really think we should do it live. And the reason I think a live migration makes a lot of sense is historically, when large data migrations have been done, both in this community and across other communities, that pause is the thing that really hurts. It slows down the momentum of development. It keeps you from adding new features. And also in this particular instance, we're drawing on our experience rescuing Rails applications from MongoDB, CouchDB, and other document-based data stores that were very popular in the early 2010s, but turned out to have very similar performance bottlenecks to Fedora 4 for very similar reasons. And what we found as we did, I must have done 20 of these migrations, that if we stop and try and do a full data migration, that just every bug becomes a showstopper. And if we do it live, what happens is we can incrementally improve and fix the process. And the big thing is that the reason for migrating, one big reason for migrating, is that the data store is fundamentally very slow, way too slow to perform in the things that we want to do. And so by doing a live migration, we actually get the performance benefit of the new rollout first, not last. We get all of that speed improvement for every new record that's ingested when it is ingested, and not 6 months from now or 12 months from now. So instead of dealing with the data out of band, we've created a new adapter. Daniel talked about it earlier. There's two of them. And that essentially allows you to read from Postgres or Fedora 6 and then write to Postgres or Fedora 6. But if the record is not already in Postgres or Fedora 6, it goes to the Fedora 4 data store and looks for it. This allows you to migrate your data live. It also leaves the Solr index alone, so you're not re-indexing with Solr at the same time as you're moving data. We decided to call the two adapters Freya and Frig. This is sort of an homage to the whole Valkyrie sort of concept. And which one you need depends on your destination. They're both the North gods. They both feel appropriate for Valkyrie adapters. And they both have an aspect of being able to see into the future. And one of the goals of Valkyrie is to more future-proof or isolate our actual repository data from the application code to enable us to move to other data stores over time. It's debated by both scholars and people on the internet whether the two goddesses were originally one and split over time, or were they two goddesses historically that became less distinct as time went by. So which one is which? The Freya adapter is the one for Postgres, and the Frig adapter is for FCREPO 6. And this is the mnemonic I use to remember it. But fundamentally, they work the same under the hood. They both read and write from their primary data store, whether it's Postgres or Fedora 6, and then they have the ability to do a fallback read from Fedora 4 as necessary. So here are the steps to getting set up with the adapter. First is to upgrade to Hyrax 5, and then you create resource models. These resource models mirror your existing models, and by convention, we recommend that you literally call them my work type resource. So generic work resource, image resource, ETD resource, etc. This makes it very clear whether you're dealing with the Valkyrie model or the active Fedora model. Getting your existing properties into your config metadata.yaml. Sorry about there's an extra slash in my slide there. And then register the model with wings, setting up collections and admin set models so they become Hyrax, PCDM collection, and administrative sets. Then you set your adapter also in the wings configuration. Or the Hyrax configuration, and then you bring over actors and customizations. Those becomes part of transactions, and then there's some other items that are sort of ancillary that need to be dealt with. It's kind of a lot of steps. In the end, it's not like the actual biggest part we'll talk about first, which is the upgrade to Hyrax 5. We recommend getting your app fully working on Hyrax 5 beforehand. This is a big step for a lot of folks. This is a Rails upgrade, it's a Hyrax upgrade, it's a Blacklight upgrade, and it's a Bootstrap 3 to 5 upgrade. And so there's quite a bit of domain knowledge that goes into getting this done. Once you've done this, the next steps, though there's quite a few of them, are much more straightforward and easier. So if you've already started your Rails upgrade or your Hyrax 5 upgrade, like you're on the right path to getting this done. Next, we're going to create some work resources. And again, we're recommending you use model name resource. That's just convenience. You can call them whatever you want, but it's certainly nice to be able to do that. And then we're going to update. Man, I really did not like that metadata.yaml file thing. So we're going to model our existing properties using the Hyrax metadata source. So we can see here we have attributes like abstract or alternate title. You can tell what type they are, whether they're multiple or not, what they appear, whether they're primary on the form or not, and if they're indexed specially by Solr. Then we register with Wings. So we're going to tell Wings that if we have an asset, we'll have an asset and an asset resource. We have collection, Hyrax PCDM collection, and Hyrax administrative set. And you'll see here that we actually map both the we register the active Fedora record and the Hyrax record. And this is because when you're dealing with them in a Hyrax context, it will convert between the two. And if you have an active Fedora model, you want it to actually stay as an active Fedora model. So by registering it, all the same code path works, and they just stay registered so that they don't get confused essentially when you're trying to save the actual old active Fedora object. You generally are trying to avoid saving that active Fedora object as much as possible because it's slow, but ultimately this gives you places where your code won't break as you're doing your transition. We have to tell Hyrax what our PCDM collection and administrative sets are, and then we set our adapter. So here we're registering the Freya adapter. We're setting it, we're creating a new metadata adapter. We're setting it. We're going to tell Hyrax to query index from Valkyrie, and we're going to use the Solar index adapter. Another small tiny piece here, and in fact, I'll go back and add this to my slides after my talk, is there is a Valkyrie environment variable that tells Valkyrie to use strings for its primary keys instead of using UUIDs. This does not actually cause any sort of significant performance degradation. You might think it would, but basically you then tell Fedora, hey, go or tell Postgres, go ahead and index those as if they were UUIDs. So it treats them very much the same under the hood. But that's necessary so that you can store the existing IDs into Postgres without it trying to regenerate them. So I'll add the setting of that environment variable to this slide here. Next, we need to go through our whole actor stack and bring over any customizations and hooks into transactions. Hyrax transactions is a new piece of the Hyrax 5 data model and replaces the actor stack. So other things to check. You're going to look for any before or after model hooks. So before create, before validate, etc. Those need to be moved into listeners or transactions. Which is a little tricky, but fundamentally it gets pretty clear once you get some practice with it. Then you're going to look for any custom logic in your controllers and make sure that that custom logic is using Valkyrie and not using the older direct active Fedora access. And then you're going to look to see if your models have any methods that need to be ported or modified. So if the old asset class has functionality that needs to be moved to asset resource, or if the old collection class needs functionality to move to PCDM collection, like that's the time you do that. A good example from the Haiku migration is collection in Haiku had a separate thumbnail object attachment. And so you could in Hyrax select an existing work to be the thumbnail for the collection. We found that to be really cumbersome and problematic. And so instead in Haiku, you just attach a thumbnail to the collection. And so that functionality needed to be ported over to the PCDM collection when that model was changed. And then lastly, we check our indexers, forms, and anywhere else we might call the model class. So if we load an asset or a generic work or an image anywhere in the app, we need to find those and change them over. Then you start migrating data. We had anticipated this taking a very long time, and it turns out to be much less painful than we had hoped it would be. So it took us about 20 days to migrate something like 2 million Fedora objects from Fedora to Postgres. At the same time, we were ingesting tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of new works a day in Postgres land. So Postgres was not the limiter at all. Fedora 4 still is the limiter just in reading it. But because all you're doing is reading each record one time to move it, it really can go very quickly. So what's next? What's left? Getting the adapters merged and released. Daniel spoke to this earlier. It's some big, complicated code. And so it's just taking some time to get that imported, and we want to make sure it works for the community. It's worked for us on the GBH application, and it's worked for us in Haiku, but I think that just making sure that that gets in a really solid state. When I talked to you in the fall, file sets and the actual file support were still missing. That has since been put into place. There's a tiny bug there that we're working on, but it is fundamentally working. And then we needed a second adopter, and Haiku, the Palni project, along with several other Haiku projects, have started to adopt this now, which is huge. And I think that we'll probably have, my expectation is by the end of May, we should have by the end of May, I expect we'll have 3 of them up, and by the end of July, I expect we'll have 6 of them up. So that's happening pretty quickly. And so then the last thing is getting everyone moved. I know this means budget conversations and hard decisions over what the next 2 years of your platforms will look like. I'm here to help with anything there I can. Fundamentally, I want folks to be able to stay in the community. I want folks to continue to be able to harness the power of this really awesome software that we're building together. But you know, it does take doing. And, I have to give my one businessy plug here, like SoftServe is here to help with that process whenever possible. We're getting to be quite the experts at the Rails upgrade, and we're getting to be quite the experts at these Valkyrizations. And I think that that'll only improve over time. But even if, you want to use inside resources, we certainly welcome that. We just want to get everyone moving, and we want to get out of Fedora 4 so that we can stop having to support or be concerned about it. Thank you. Again, I'm Rob Kaufman. I'm Rob at scientist.com and at Orange Wolf, just about anywhere else on the internets.